So quantum stocks had an explosive day today. We're going to look at 5 different tickers. We're going to look at QBT, SEALSQ, LAES, Rigetti, QBTS, D-Wave, and IONQ. We're going to look at sort of the price action, but I want to start with some big headlines from IBM and Nvidia. So quantum computing is at an inflection point, according to Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang. Let's take a listen to him at the most recent GTC Paris keynote and see what he has to say about quantum.
Well, one of the most exciting is Qubt. Qt is this suite of libraries, a library suite for accelerating applications and algorithms on top of CUDA. We now have Qt. Qt is for quantum computing, for classical quantum classical computing based on GPUs. We've been working on Qt now for several years, and today I can tell you there's an inflection point happening in quantum computing. As you know, the first physical qubit was demonstrated some nearly 30 years ago. An error correction algorithm was invented in 1995. And in 2023, almost 30 years later, the world's first logical qubit was demonstrated by Google. Now, since then, a couple of years later, the number of logical qubits, which is represented by a whole lot of physical qubits with error correction, the number of logical qubits are starting to grow. Well, just like Moore's Law would, I could totally expect 10 times more logical qubits every 5 years, 100 times more logical qubits every 10 years. Those logical qubits would become better error corrected, more robust, higher performance, more resilient, and of course, will continue to be scalable. Quantum computing is reaching an inflection point. We've been working with quantum computing companies all over the world in several different ways, but here in Europe, there's a large community. I saw Pascal last night. I saw Barcelona Supercomputing last night. It is clear now we're within reach of being able to apply quantum computing, quantum classical computing in areas that can solve some interesting problems in the coming years. This is a really exciting time. And so we've been working with all of the supercomputing centers. It's very clear now that over the next several years, or at least the next generation of supercomputers, every single one of them will have a QPU assigned and QPU connected to GPUs. The QPU will do quantum computing, of course, and the GPUs would be used for pre-processing, for control, for error correction, which will be intensely computationally intensive, post-processing and such. Between the two architectures, just as we accelerated the CPU, now there's QPU working with the GPU to enable the next generation of computing. Well, today we're announcing that our entire quantum algorithm stack is now accelerated on Grace Blackwell 200. And the speed up is utterly incredible.
Wow.
We work with the quantum computing industry in several different ways. One way is using cuQuantum to simulate the qubits or simulate the algorithms that runs on top of these quantum computers, essentially using a classical computer to simulate or emulate a quantum computer. At the other extreme, extremely important is CUDA-Q, basically inventing a new CUDA that extends CUDA into quantum classical, so that applications that are developed on CUDA-Q can run before the quantum computer arrives in an emulated way, or after the quantum computer arrives in a collaborative way, a quantum classical accelerated computing approach.
So this is obviously pretty huge news for the quantum industry, as Nvidia started the year and Jensen started the year saying this technology was 30 years away, 15, 20 years, and now it's going to be part of every supercomputer stack, and Nvidia's aggressively pursuing this. And it's really great to see this shift from Nvidia, as they are one of the leaders, if not the most important leader in hardware and software technology in the world. So really incredible to hear these words from Jensen. Let's see if he had anything else on quantum.
And so today we're announcing Qubt is available for Grace Blackwell. The ecosystem here is incredibly rich. And of course, Europe is deep with science and deep with supercomputing expertise and deep with heritage in this area. And it's not surprising to see quantum computing advance here. In the next several years, we're going to see a really fantastic inflection point. So anyways, for all of the quantum computer industry that have been working on this for 3 decades now, I congratulate you for just the incredible accomplishment and the milestones today. Thank you.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful nod to the whole quantum industry and all the physicists and doctors and business people that have been working on these very hard problems for a very long time. So you're hearing it now from Jensen Huang that 2025 is different than previous years. There are many things happening with quantum and quantum computing. Sometimes we take for granted how fast technology can change, and quantum is no exception. I was just reflecting on back when I was in college, and an iPod or an iPhone was a new thing, and I didn't have an iPhone or an iPod. And I distinctly remember I had a classmate in one of my classes, and I saw him on the internet on his iPod Touch. And I said, "Can I try that? Can I try that?" And I held it in my hand, and my mind was blown. I had the internet in my hands, and just overnight, it seems that technology can change. And what's really important to understand with quantum computing is also, as he talks about here, the Grace Blackwell being one of the most powerful chips that Nvidia offers, the AI and hardware we've already built and the semiconductor ecosystem we've already built is going to accelerate quantum computing. A lot of people think that there's going to be that 30-year slow, gradual step increase to quantum computing. But in reality, we have learned so much from building chips, from building these supercomputer centers, and now quantum computing is coming to life right before our eyes. So really just a historical year in 2025. So much has happened already, and so much is yet to come. So let's get into some recent headlines. So IBM has set course to build the world's first large-scale fault-tolerant quantum computer at the new IBM Quantum Data Center. And this just came out yesterday. So the headlines just keep coming. This is a very fast-changing topic, and we just got to try to stay up as best we can. So on the IBM Quantum Roadmap, processors and infrastructure outline a clear path to IBM Quantum Starling, expected to be the first large-scale fault-tolerant quantum computer. Breakthrough research defines key elements for an efficient fault-tolerant architecture, charting the first viable path toward a run 20,000 times more operations than today's quantum computers. Representing the computational state of IBM Starling would require the memory of more than a quindecillion of the world's most powerful supercomputers. Really, really amazing. The headlines and the shift in tone and the acceleration of this space. And we even saw it in my video last night in IONQ and that Oxford and LightSync and that just holy trinity, that triad of forced and the trap ion technology. And I'm still buzzing. I'm still excited about what I saw from IONQ, and their acquisitions are going to make a meaningful difference for them to reach the goals in their roadmap. So we have huge, the biggest company in the world, Nvidia, talking about quantum. We have IBM, who's reaching all-time highs in the stock market, who has lots and lots of room to run if they're building quantum computers this powerful. And then you have the pure plays. You have IONQ, you have D-Wave, you have Rigetti, you have all these companies that are also doing well. It is just a super exciting time for this technology. And as people learn and begin to understand about quantum computers, it's really just kind of a magical journey, to be honest. Let's take a look at the stock heat map today. So really the market just kind of cooled off a little bit today. We see that Google, Meta, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, all the big players were either trading flat or were down. And it was a fairly red day. We've had a lot of green days, so some pullback is expected at a certain point. But in our quantum watch list, we saw that the tailwinds from the Nvidia keynote really pushed some of these stocks to some incredible momentum. So we've covered Qubt on the channel before, and they had a 25% day. We've covered LAES on the channel before, and I've posted a recent video how I've been just buying LAES as quick as I can, and this stock has been on a tear. Rigetti was kind of dormant and sleeping, and then suddenly just had a nice pop today. And you know what's interesting is while the stocks closed at these numbers, it doesn't really tell the story because a lot of these stocks had huge days and had some sell-off because the wider market was selling off. So if we had a very bullish day in the market, some of this list would have been even more green. As you can see from the stock heat map, it was no day to write home about. So we're going to take a look at first Qubt. And Qubt, I still am trying to understand what is going on with this company. I've reached out to them for comment. I want to talk to somebody over there, but their stock is on this tear. It was at $5.83 in April. And the stock today closed, it actually touched $20, almost $21, and it closed at about $20 roughly. So for a 230% gain. And at this point, it's well off its rising support. And lots of volume is coming in as well. We can see also on the relative strength index that the stock is overbought at this point. And Qubt continues to be a mystery to me. Like I've said a few times on the channel before, I'm not picking one horse in the race. I do own shares of Qubt as well in a couple accounts. I don't have a firm grasp on exactly what they're doing, and it's a little bit difficult because they themselves aren't very good at PR. So I guess a lot of people are very optimistic about Qubt from the price action because that is a serious candle. If any of you know more about Qubt or own shares in Qubt, leave a comment. Who the heck is buying all of it? Look at the volume that's come in the last 4 days. Let's get some answers. Leave some comments if you own Qubt. All right, so we have talked about SEALSQ, LAES, and I made a video and I've talked about this so many times, but really what I wanted to see from LAES to be convinced that it was in a bullish reversal was I wanted it to see it break above this $3.88 line. And we have certainly broken that 388 line. And now we're definitely at this point in a bullish reversal. And we have had some really interesting price action and volume. So I want you to take a look at the volume during this rally. So from 350, our volume is picked up. Then from 380 to this push up to 420, we had some increased volume. And then we opened today and we push almost to 456. And you see I have that level drawn out here. It did get rejected just shy of 456, sold down. But then once again, we had a lot of volume in this push up. This is unusual price action. And it just shows there's a lot of bullish sentiment in the market because this stock has been absolutely on a tear. If we look back at the last month, this stock was $2.35. And we can see this green candle. And if we take a look at just the move to the end of today, that's a 90% increase. So if you're trading quantum stocks, just understand that it's a risky trade. and it's a speculative trade, and maybe not all of these companies will work out. So one thing that you can do to protect yourself is if you're concerned about the macro changing, or if you feel like they're too risky, you can always set a stop loss and secure profits. And you can do that even when the market isn't open. So I encourage, if you are in these names and you are concerned about risk of losing some of your profits, to set a stop loss and secure those gains. One more final thought on LAES. So if we look back at the year, so LAES closes, really what it's done from this point is it's tended to move up with velocity. We don't have actually very much price history above $4.50. We only have like a week in 2025. So we don't really know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's just going to go and chop around. We don't know if it's going to explode up and retest all-time highs. We do not know at this point what it's going to do. If we go all the way back to IPO days, in July of 23, we see that there were wick touches at 28, and the stock sold down to this rally. So we are at a very interesting point in the chart and news and sentiment about quantum, and that makes this play very interesting. So calculate your risk reward and do your own due diligence. Let's take a look at Rigetti. So Rigetti, we had called on the channel before that it had broken its rising support and had started to chop sideways. And it had today a nice 10% day. And if we look at the price action from today, most of the gains happened pre-market. So there was a gap up. And then there was an additional rally into the day where Rigetti went all the way up to 1360, which is a really big move for Rigetti. And then it sold off and sort of chopped around for the rest of the day and ended at about 1250, which is very impressive because for the last number of trading days, it was trading at 1150. So we added $1 per share, and the volume is certainly there. Let's look at, so in Rigetti's initial rally during the quantum frenzy, we saw it build all the way up to almost 22 before it gapped down, and it touched $6 where it found some support. It made it back up to 14, and it sold down despite weak earnings. The self-proclaimed R&D company has started its rally and its move back up. So could we see Rigetti start to hang around this $12 to $16 range? Absolutely. Could we see it move higher? Could we see it break? There's not really much resistance ahead for Rigetti. Of course, we do have to consider that it did close on a resistance, but we don't have a lot of price history above 1250 and between 1250 and 16. And when it's been at 1250 to 1216, it did explode higher. So what's Rigetti going to do? It's looking quite bullish based on the candles today. However, it did end right on that rising support. I haven't revised the rising support. Let's get some more data and price action before we make any calls on if it is starting to get out of its trading sideways and in more of a bullish reversal. Okay, QBTS. We haven't talked about QBTS for a few days, and it definitely has been, it's been like -3%, -5%, -2%. There's definitely been some sell-off. So the trend recently has been, there's been sell-off. However, I personally am long on the name, and I actually think it's very healthy for the stock to establish this price history between this 16 and 18 mark. As you can see, it's moved up to 18 and down to 16 and up to 18. And it's even broken 18 in recent trading sessions. One concern would be recently there haven't been any specific catalysts for D-Wave. So we've seen volume trail off a little bit. And we've also seen that this blue line here, which indicates the rising support, has been broken. So the trend has changed. And I've revised that trend one time already. So the trend might look more like, if we look at just a very, very small period of time, it might look like something like this. But if you look at the chart, you can see it's kind of doing a little bit of consolidation. And it's not too far away from its all-time high, which is this 1979. So with a catalyst, we could see volume come back in for D-Wave, and we could see another push. I think D-Wave still has a lot of gas left in the tank. It's just kind of waiting for the next Q. And maybe with all the news lately from IONQ and Nvidia and all the progress of the gate model systems, it's having annealing feeling a little left out. But we know that annealing should have a purpose as well, and a different purpose than gate. So let's see how D-Wave does, both in their own progress as a company and on the stock chart. Finally, IONQ, a company that I am more excited about than I have ever been. We saw that IONQ had this really incredible 40% move in one day. And that was a 43% move. And then it held in this channel right here between 44 and 49. If we go back even further, if we go back a year, we know that this move wasn't too far. They were right on the doorstep of their all-time high. So recently we see these, in this last month, we see that there was this rally up, this sell-off, and it actually even came down to 36, giving away most of the rally, and it's bounced here. And if we look more specifically at the last 5 days, we see there's a lot of pre-market activity and sell-off, or a lot of market open activity and sell-off. So a lot of spikes and dips and spikes and dips. And one thing we like to see with IONQ is volume. So volume candles are still looking good. And we see that we're getting wick touches up to 44. So we are filling this price channel, and we are finding support pretty consistently. We have about a dozen or more bounces at 39, which means that there is a high likelihood that IONQ could stay in this channel or potentially find itself in a bullish trend. And after listening to the webinar and listening to the roadmap, if IONQ is able to post some decent quarterlies and or deliver on their roadmap and accelerate their systems, I don't think this stock is even going to be under 50 for long. That's just my personal opinion. You should do your own due diligence and make your own conclusions. Anyway, we covered a whole ton of stuff in this episode. If you like content like this, if you're interested in quantum stocks, check out thequantumbull.com. I made it friendly for both computers, iPads, and even phones. I have some background in web design, so I hope you enjoy the website, and you can share it with family and friends if they're interested in this topic. And if you are interested in content like this on YouTube, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you all soon.